The Pan-Yoruba Socio-Political Organization, Afenifere, has called on President Bola Tinubu to take five-pronged approaches to prevent the country from total socio-economic dislocation, one of which is for the president to seek debt relief from the country's major creditors. The recommendation by Afenifere came just as the national chairman of the Southwest Agenda for Asiwaju Swaga, Senator Adedayo Adeyeye, appealed to Nigerians to remain calm in the face of current pains and hardship caused by the removal of fuel subsidy by the Tinubu-led administration. Also, Fitch Solutions, a global provider of credit, debt markets, as well as country and industry risk research, at the weekend predicted that the current economic reforms embarked upon by the Tinubu government would dim Nigeria's short-term outlook, predicting that average inflation rate would hit 25.1% this year amid spiking poverty. The recommendation by Afenifere was contained in a statement signed yesterday by its National Publicity Secretary, Jare Ajayi. The recommendations also included drastic reduction in emoluments, slash in the size of government, ways to go about palliatives, and to halt the recent hike in tuition fees. Well, a few advice or recommendation suggestions posed to the president this morning by these groups and individuals. Your take, Rufai?
So, a couple of ideas. Yeah, I get the slant of where the Afenifere is coming from. 1999, when President Olusegun Obasanjo came in, we're in this debacle too. We had quite some debts, and we had to go negotiate with our Parry Club debtors. And they gave us a leeway, and we're able to stabilize things. And Olusegun Obasanjo did a lot for the economy then. Out of the doldrums of the military era, Nigeria's economy started to grow. And at some point, we peaked at over double-digit economic growth. And from then on, we had a sustenance to single-digit high economic growth. And we saw his management of the economy. But it was a better case to push then because you saw the accountability. And I remember the debt forgiveness debates that went on, and I was championed also by Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. But since that time, we have gone back to our bad ways. The reason why we are here today is because of the mismanagement of the hitherto government and lack of planning and clarity. At a time like this, we have seen this debt forgiveness thing play out. Then it was good for the West. It was a very good argument to forgive Africa's debt, thinking that African countries were going to be on the path of stability. But most of the countries that their debts were forgiven tend to have taken more debts. And most of these debts we have taken in Nigeria, things we can account for. So for debt forgiveness, it's going to be a tall order. Trying to get 13 billion shaved of our debts. It is going to be a very tall order. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's going to be a tall order. Because what was even the integrity threshold of why we collected this debt in the first place? What did we do with the money? You can see how we are still disputing National Register. You can see the 800 billion we collected in debt. You can see all the other monies we have borrowed to be able to do other social intervention schemes. Have we been able to account for them effectively? Secondly, they also talked about the need to halt this hike in tuition fees. Yes, because it's also going to spike inflation. And you see, one of the things we've always enjoyed in this country is education that was affordable and had some level of standard. Also, the way we even give our palliatives to cushion effects, we must be able to revisit it and do it in such a way that we're not just throwing money around or there's no accountability. Also, we need to have massive cuts. I heard Senator Shomole speaking yesterday and talking about the fact that government officials are still highly underpaid, that they had to put a lot of things in themselves. That take for instance, he had to buy his own television when he got to the House of the Senate, that they had pilferaged most of the things there, they had stolen most of the items there. Maybe those are the sacrifices they have to make. Because at this point in time, apart from the 70 billion they have gotten, they should remember Nigeria doesn't have anything. And we should also stop that culture that once some people are leaving office, they take everything away. The reason why Nigeria is where we are today, and I understand the reason why Afenifere is talking like this. The reason why Nigeria is where we are today is because we have mismanaged all of our blessings. We have squandered our riches. Onyeka Onwenu made a documentary film in '83, about 40 years ago, called The Squandering of Riches. It was a joint partnership between the BBC and the NTA. And what she said, if you were to extrapolate to Nigeria 40 years after, it's still the same problem. We have squandered our riches. And that's the work cut out for President Tinubu. How he's going to be able to manage this, how he's going to be able to cut away other things that helps us squander our riches. How we're going to hold public officials accountable. And we must not hear fragrant display of wealth. We must not hear big convoys any longer. How you can cushion the effect of the people, because the government is supposed to be for the people. So I wish them well.
Okay. Nigeria is the fourth most indebted country in the world. As of June 2022, we had raked up to about $13 billion. Now, there's a global debt bomb that is waiting to happen. And it's not just Nigeria that is affected in this regard. Countries like Zambia, countries like Ghana, countries like Kenya. In fact, debt overload is a big issue also in Kenya. But what makes the Nigerian situation really disturbing is that we use about 97% of our revenue to service debt. If you use 97% of your revenue to service debt, then there will be no money for development. And the fear is that the country will continue to borrow and borrow. Hence, many people, are concerned in this regard, and they are saying, well, as Afenifere is asking now, Afenifere is asking for debt forgiveness. Now, we got debt forgiveness under the Obasanjo administration in 2005. Will it be easy this time around to achieve debt forgiveness from anybody? What the international community is talking about since the COVID-19 crisis and the impact on developing countries has been debt restructuring, debt rescheduling, with persons like President Macron of France talking about the possibility of debt restructuring, debt rescheduling. I don't hear too many people within the international community talking about debt forgiveness. But Afenifere is making this recommendation. I don't know how far, we'll be able to go with that. Despite the fact that, okay, in 2005, when we got that debt forgiveness, okay, what was the outcome? We had continued, mismanagement of Nigeria's resources, taking us to where we are at this moment, and we are having to go back to the past. However, the intervention by Afenifere is very instructive. It's good to see Afenifere, a socio-cultural group, from the Southwest, making specific recommendations to government. This time around, it's not about ethnic politics. It's not about saying, oh, somebody from Southeast says something about Yoruba people. Or, oh, we are joining hands with our brothers from the Middle Belt to do this. It's about, a group, a socio-cultural group, also giving ideas about how the economy can be better managed. Fitch says that inflation is likely to go up to 25.1%. At the moment, we are at 22.79%. And that Nigeria, as a result of removal of fuel subsidy, is going to face, serious, difficulties. We're already seeing that. They say in the short term, the same thing that the World Bank told us in the short term, and then there will be deflation and all of that. That remains to be seen. But how you manage the process is the kernel of it. And what are those other recommendations that Afenifere is making that we can talk about? One, Afenifere is saying government should discourage DISCOs, electricity distribution companies, from increasing tariffs, that this is not the right time to do it. Afenifere is saying, look, schools should not hike fees, which was a big issue over the weekend, with the fees for unity schools going to as high as 100,000, and universities also increasing fees. Afenifere is saying, look, there's so much hardship in the country, and government must look for other ways of addressing the challenge. What are some of their other recommendations? They say plug leakages, reduce the size of government, and I guess we all agree in that regard. They said, ensure safety of lives and properties. Nobody can argue with that. And they are also saying ensure the security of lives and property so that everybody can move around. And they say introduce policies that will generate jobs and that will generate growth and employment, in real terms. So those are useful contributions. And coming from a socio-cultural group, I think other socio-cultural groups should emulate the example of Afenifere so that we have less of ethnic baiting and, all of us get involved in this process of making Nigeria a better place. You referred to Senator Adedayo Adeyeye appealing to people to be patient with the Tinubu administration. Well, it's very interesting that many people from the Tinubu camp, President Tinubu's allies, they are all now begging for calm and patience. And people, in fact, Senator Adeyeye, former spokesperson of the National Assembly, was spokesperson for the 9th National Assembly, went as far as saying that, in fact, after this pain, there will be everlasting joy. Well, I don't know how many Nigerians will believe that. We've been promised everlasting joy forever, and people are still in pain. In fact, Nigeria is one big space now for trekathon. People are trekking up and down. Well, maybe that's a positive side of it, because ordinarily, one of the fallouts is that Tinubu's removal of first subsidy has turned Nigeria into one big gym. It's a national gym. This morning I saw people trekking with so much enthusiasm where they don't have an option in the matter. They are dealing with obesity in England. They are even reducing, they are adding some seconds to the green light at traffic points so that people who are porky can take their time before they cross the road. Here we don't have that issue. Very soon all of us will be looking very slim and very fit. No thanks to fuel subsidy removal. Anyway, that's on the lighter side of it. But they should stop begging us to be calm, to be patient. Nigerians are very patient people. We just want results. We just want good governance. Okay? My pot belly has even disappeared. But, by the time we all trek more, we'll be looking like broomsticks. Anyway, that's just about it.
All right. Well, free gym for Nigerians is what's on offer as part of the other benefits of the fuel subsidy removal. But Nigerians are suffering. That's the truth. We've seen pictures that make a number of people worry as to the policy direction of this particular administration. But as already been established, it's a great move by Afenifere to make these recommendations to the president, and of course, Senator Adeyeye also assuring Nigerians or trying to calm Nigerians that things will get better. In truth, we need communication like this. We need people, statesmen, elder statesmen, to come out and really speak to Nigerians and hopefully assure or reassure Nigerians that things will get better. Because beyond the provision, whilst we wait for the provisions of the president in terms of palliative measure, we also need to boost the spirit of Nigerians because a number of people are feeling quite despondent. So on that note, great work. But in terms of breaking down the details of their statement, I'd like to center in, since the seeking debt forgiveness has already been spoken about in detail, the aspect around cutting down waste and the body language of this particular government, if they would indeed attract international attention and perhaps forgiveness of debt. The Center for Global Development, who was part of that deal with the Paris Club during the forgiveness of about 13 billion in debts for Nigerians, or 18 billion in debts for Nigeria, occasioned by the then Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, had mentioned that now that this debt had been forgiven, the future gains is what matters the most. How Nigeria would consolidate on these history-making forgiveness to begin to have economic policies and reforms that would benefit the nation long-term. Unfortunately, about 10, 15 years post the forgiveness of debt, these economic reforms haven't happened, and it almost seems as if we have gone back to where we started from in terms of our debt challenge. It has been said already that the debt servicing is about 97%. So for every naira that we make, or for every amount of money, revenue that comes in, we're paying 97 kobo on that particular naira to fund or to service our debts. It's not sustainable. So what should the Tinubu government start doing in terms of the forgiveness of debt, beyond conversations with international organizations or perhaps with those who we are indebted to, is to also begin to demonstrate to the world that we are serious about this. We cannot ask for debt forgiveness if the government is over-bloated, or if it does not look like we're ready to cut our quota according to our sizes. That's part of what Afenifere had recommended through Mr. Jare Ajayi in that statement. If we're going to seek redress or debt forgiveness, if we're going to make sound economic decisions, then we must demonstrate that by even the economic position of our nation currently. And then when Senator Adeyeye spoke about the importance of Nigerians being calm, fuel subsidy, even though it's like they keep referring to it as a mother who's in labor, who's giving birth. Whilst that's correct, because truly the country is in labor pains. You can feel the pangs of the pains of labor. And what Nigerians are hopeful for is that these labor pains would be fruitful and that we would birth something really great. But we must also recognize in medical terms that during labor, if it is not well handled, you can lose the life of both the mother and child, or perhaps have tears that would cause a lot of problems for the mother. So the way in which it's handled is very critical. Therefore, when the government announces policy reforms with a lot of hikes here and there are no attendant palliatives or plans to cushion the effect of these hikes, there's a big challenge because people are getting poorer. So whilst the economic decisions are right, or the labor pains are important to birth something great, it must be properly handled so it does not cause more harm than good in the beginning. So whilst we keep referring to these labor pains and we should endure so that in the end we'll have a beautiful child to come out of it, we must also be ready to ensure that these policies are well formulated so that the ordinary Nigerian does not suffer, at the end of the day. Very important.